All right, good evening. This is the May 27th, 2025 Altamont Village Zoning Board regular meeting. Time is 7 p.m. Exits are in front of you, behind you. And please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we begin, I would just like to publicly thank Danny Ramirez for all his years of service to the village, especially with the zoning and planning boards. And I wish him well in his retirement and whatever comes next. In front of us today, we have a special use permit application from 120 Park LLC, Jeff Thomas, for property at 120 Park Street, Altamont, New York, 12009. Tax map number 48.06-4-4, 37.18-6-3. To consider scheduling a public hearing on Thomas's appeal from the Code Enforcement Officer's interpretation of parking. And I'll ask council to summarize what's going on.
Thank you. So we have before us today an appeal from the Code Enforcement Officer's interpretation regarding the parking that has been proposed in connection with a mixed-use development that the applicant originally submitted an application for a special use permit for.
I think we should introduce ourselves.
That's a good point.
Charles Trutt.
Simon Litton.
Lori Penzi.
James Sullivan.
Allison Phillips.
Bob Freeman.
Elizabeth Laparco.
Andrea Witham.
Thank you, Simon.
So just going back, when the application for special use permit was submitted to this board, one of the first things that we had to look at was whether or not the use that was proposed is permitted in this district under the Village of Altamont Code. The Village ZBA only has the ability to review and consider applications for special use permits or, other administrative approvals like site plan approval for uses that are already permitted in that location under our village code. The question of whether the mixed-use development that the applicant was proposing is permitted in this district arose, which led to an interpretation by our code enforcement officer that the use was not in fact permitted in this location. In addition, he reviewed the special use permit application and made 3 other determinations relevant to whether or not certain setbacks would require a variance under our code, and also whether the amount of parking that was provided as part of the project met our code requirements. Once those determinations were made by the code enforcement officer, the applicant had the ability under our code to seek an appeal of that determination or any of those determinations to the Zoning Board of Appeals. The applicant did exercise that option and did file an appeal only to that portion of the code enforcement officer's determination that there was not sufficient parking provided as part of the project plan. Because that appeal was filed and was timely, that comes to the ZBA that it must now consider whether or not the code enforcement officer's interpretation should be upheld or affirmed, should be reversed, or should be modified. In order to make that determination, the Zoning Board of Appeals has to hold a public hearing, and it has to consider, the record that was before the code enforcement officer at the time he made that determination. So when an appeal to the ZBA is made, it stays all other proceedings on the application or project until that appeal is determined. So, it may seem like we're putting the cart before the horse, kind of thinking about, is there enough parking for a project that our code enforcement officer has said the use isn't even permitted at this location. But because of the way our code is set up, we have to consider this appeal first, and then the applicant has other available remedies if they want to pursue the project, which would require an amendment to our zoning law, which they have to go to the village board for. So right now, before the zoning board of appeals is only the determination of the code enforcement officers, an appeal from the code enforcement officer's determination or interpretation on the parking. As part of the record, when the code enforcement officer made those determinations, again, there was 4 determinations that were actually made with regard to this project. The record includes some documents that, aren't relevant to the parking specifically. But, we will have that transmitted to the ZBA and also made available to members of the public, anyone who wants to review it in advance of the public hearing, which the board will consider if they want to schedule this evening. On the parking specifically, we do have a copy of the applicant's concept plan, which the code enforcement officer did use to calculate how many parking spaces he felt were required under the code, where those parking spaces were located, and ultimately the amount of deficiency that he did find. So because we have, this hard copy of the map, I will take this map and have it digitally scanned so we can disseminate it electronically both to the applicant and make it available to any members of the public who want to review it before the public hearing next month, because that will be part of the record, as will the information that's included with the applicant's submission that all of the board members have, where they have given and laid out how they came up with their parking calculations and make the argument that what they provided is actually a surplus or beyond what the code requires. So the ZBA, after hearing the public hearing and reviewing all the information in the record and all the information the applicant has submitted in support of its appeal, will then make a determination whether or not the code enforcement officer's determination on the parking should be affirmed or reversed or modified. And once that determination is made, the applicant, would have the ability to pursue, other remedies that are available to it if it wants to pursue the project specifically to have the use permitted in the location that's proposed. So with that background, really the only step for the board to consider tonight is whether or not it wants to move forward to schedule that public hearing that is required on the appeal. Considering we have the complete record, we have the information from the applicant, really that's all the information that the board, can consider in addition to what we're going to hear during the public hearing process. It would be my recommendation to take that step and to schedule the public hearing tonight.
So I guess we'll open it up for discussion. Anyone have any specific thoughts about opening a public hearing to consider the appeal?
And it would be just to schedule the public hearing
Right.
that we would open at
Oh, did I say
a future
open?
date.
Excuse me, sorry. You wish. Seeing no discussion, it seems appropriate to ask for a motion to schedule a public hearing.
I'll make that.
Second? Anyone?
I'll second that.
Simon
Robert?
and Robert.
Thank you. Okay, roll call. Board Member Freeman?
I'm sorry. That was not
I'm
bad.
going by alphabetical order.
I'll second the motion.
So,
Roll call.
Affirmative.
okay. Board Member Litton?
Affirmative.
Board Member LaPaco?
Affirmative.
Board Member Chow?
Yes.
Board Member Penn?
Yes.
Board Member Witham?
In favor.
And Chairperson Sullivan?
In favor.
Thank you.
And
Mary Beth Slevin here on behalf of the applicant.
Would you mind going to the mic? Thank you.
Again, my name is Mary Beth Slevin. I'm counsel for the applicant. So just a quick question. The date for the public hearing?
Looks like it would be June 17th at 7 PM. Is that correct?
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Can we discuss where the discrepancy in the parking calculation arrives? It seems, from what I read, it seems like The question is whether you round 1.5 to 2 at the beginning or the end of the calculation.
Not to put too many words in Gary's mouth, but my understanding is, yes, that is part of Gary's determination when looking at the code and doing the calculations, taking the square footage and the number of spaces that would then be required by the code. If you come out with a half number, it's Gary's interpretation that you need to round up because that needs to be a fully provided for parking space. And when he uses that methodology, specifically with regard to the post office building, and then using those calculations also for the mixed use and the residential building, he does come out with a larger number of required spaces. Okay, so the record will show the public hearing has been scheduled for June 17th at 7:00 PM. The record of proceedings before the code enforcement officer will be disseminated to the members of the ZBA, including the hard copy of this map that we have here tonight. We'll also provide a copy of that to the applicant, and they'll be made available for members of the public who want to review it in advance of the public hearing. And we'll also work with the ZBA secretary to get that notice published in the paper. I'll just note also for the record that, an appeal from an interpretation of the code enforcement officer's determination is a type 2 action under seeker. So we don't have to conduct an environmental review as part of our, the process of hearing this appeal. Okay.
Okay. Next point of business is the review and approval of minutes from the meeting on February 25th, 2025. Everyone had an opportunity? Yeah.
Excuse me, Meredith, I know that the materials are due 2 weeks before the meeting, so even though this meeting is a week before the board.
We submitted everything about a month ago.
Okay, so there's no more things.
Nothing additional, but thanks for the reminder, appreciate it.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Any errors or omissions or conversation on the minutes? Okay. Motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Can we get a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call in alphabetical order. So, Board Member Freeman,
Approved.
Board Member Litton,
Approved.
Board Member LaParco,
Approved.
Board Member Trout,
Approved.
Board Member Penn,
Approved.
Board Member Witham,
Approved.
and Chairperson Sullivan.
Approved.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see, I think the only other thing I would like to mention is we have a new member.
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, I'm sorry. Elizabeth,
Yes.
welcome.
Thank you.
All right.
Can I just ask a question? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The meeting, June 17th, that's not our usual meeting night, right? Is that a special meeting we're scheduling?
No, at the beginning of the year, we looked at the calendar, and the Board of Elections had contacted us, and there was supposed to be an election that day.
Okay.
And so we made the determination, Danny, I sent all of, but they have to be approved, the dates have to be approved by the village board before the, at the organizational meeting.
Okay.
So, we determined to, have that be on June 17th.
Okay.
But then, in the meantime, the Board of Elections decided not to have this as their site, so it just is on the calendar because
Gotcha.
that's the way it was supposed to be.
Okay, so that was already approved at the beginning of the year. We don't need to notice it as a special meeting.
Okay.
Right.
But only that it's a public hearing?
Yes, we will still publish a notice that it's a public hearing, but we don't have to also notice it as a special meeting.
Gotcha. All right. Unless anyone else has any other business, motion to adjourn the meeting. Or we can stay.
I will make that.
Second.
Sorry, who's second? Lori, thank you. All right, roll call. Board Member Freeman.
Approved.
Board Member Lefferts.
Approved.
Board Member McCarthy.
Approved.
Board Member Kraft.
Approved.
Board Member Pittman.
Approved.
Board Member Wintham.
Approved.
And Chairperson Sullivan.
Approved.
Thank you.
Probably the shortest meeting we've ever had.
Yeah.
I might be able to go back to the ball field.
Yeah, that was a quick
It's like
meeting. Are they typically that fast?
Not much to consider.
So I will take this map and scan tomorrow.
That's what I get for making a
And,
motion
I
and
will
not thinking
email
about it.
everyone.